This is Sanah Ahsan, and you are a good friend of mine, also poet and liberation psychologist. We've just been in this friendship for the last few years, but I've always really admired your work, and you've been an important force behind some of the work that I'm doing in this album, but also you've contributed to some of the interludes. We hear your voice like 3 times across the album. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And what does divinity like mean to you? And I don't know if it's necessarily like a word that I would have included if it hadn't come from our exchanges. So I just wondered if you wanted to like say anything on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I want to start with our friendship and the coming together of our spirits, actually in a very creative moment, like both of us doing this TED Talk. And feeling so much gratitude to be in this deep spiritual friendship with you for so many years. And I think we're both so heavily influenced by Bell Hooks' work and how she defines love as an action, but also as this kind of mutuality of spiritual growth. And I think that has been the marker of this relationship, like witnessing growth and both being committed to each other's growth over the years. And I think seeing you in this continual evolution, not just through your art making, but also in how you live and how you love and mothering. And I think when I say the word mothering, I mean it as a kind of like a verb beyond just, you know, raising children, but like world making and world raising. And I think that's really at the heart of your work as well. I think that when you offer this kind of creativity, there's a generosity in it that's like, how can I make a difference? How can I make new worlds? How am I involved and active in world building? And that to me is just divinity at its heart. You know, I think trusting that we are divine is a kind of new world making, because the world that we're in, it tries to tell us otherwise. It seeds this message of deficiency. It seeds this message of brokenness. And I think new world making is actually reminding each other over and over again of our divinity. And I think we do that through acts of love. And the heart of this album for me is this kind of divine love. And I also feel like that sits at the heart of our relationship, a real love. And yeah, I'm blessed to love you and be loved by you.
It just, when we did the listening session in London, I was just like, and this is why you're a poet. I just feel like you're so good with words. And like, it makes sense to me why I'm so inspired by like just your work and your books and your poems, and why it made sense to like include you in this, in the album. And I found that these conversations that we would have and the way that you would frame these ideas would be so nourishing for me, and they would really disrupt like the narratives that I grew up with. And you know, definitely like being like an immigrant or like a Black person, like a Black woman, you know, growing up like in the Bay Area, sort of my experience definitely echoes what you said, like this sentiment of like deficiency, like I am not enough as I am, and I have to like be excellent, or like, you know, or I have to speak in this kind of way. I can't come as I am, you know. I can't, there wasn't this sort of sense that the world was ready to like embrace me like as I truly am, you know. And so to be able to make a kind of work that doesn't strive to do that, you know. I feel like in this album, like I'm just like, this is what I wanted to make in this point in time. Like this is who I've grown to become now, and like this is what I'm thinking about. Importantly, I'm trying to maybe be someone else who contributes to the, you know, the chorus of voices who are trying to shift that internal narrative that like some of us have grown up with. And I think maybe that is changing now, I think like for the younger generations, but certainly when I was coming up, there was just like a lot of negativity, you know, expelled like towards me, if that makes sense. And then you kind of internalize that and you're like, this is not actually what I believe, and this is not what I want to believe, and I don't want this to control me anymore. And so when you talked about like mothering, it made me think about this like remothering thing. Mothering is not just something that you provide to your children. It can be an attitude that you carry towards yourself and towards like everybody in your life, you know?
For sure. It makes me think of Alexis Pauline Gumbs' definition of revolutionary remothering, which is this mothering as a verb, which is how are we living this kind of new world raising, which is, I think, what you're speaking to, which is how is my music medicinal and maternal and nurturing to raise a different way of being in this world, which is rooted in a self-trust and a sovereignty. And I think especially for Black and brown bodies, for queer bodies, for trans bodies, how can we remind each other of the essence being divine when there's so much kind of, so many lies imposed upon us relentlessly. And I think there's something really beautiful about being so open with that feeling of brokenness that relieves the isolation that so many people carry with it. I think the acute sense of suffering comes from when you feel I'm alone with this feeling of less than or broken or not good enough. And when we realize that so many of us are in the sharedness of this suffering, the sharedness of this grief, it becomes another means for connection and connectivity. And I think then the album becomes like the heartbeat of that, bringing people together and connecting with that sense of, we share this sense of brokenness, but actually that brokenness is a pathway and a portal back to remembering we are inherently divine. We are made, yes, with cracks and frailty, but that is also a source of real beauty. You know?
For me, in the first song, Something's Broken, is like really sort of starts to say like, wait, this is not me. It's like, this is the world, and the world is trying to project this idea upon me that is actually like not me. And I was speaking to a friend who grew up in Sierra Leone, and because he grew up like in the world that doesn't, it's not like black and white, you know, it's like everybody is black there. And he never had to grow up with this idea that like, I'm a black man. When I speak to him about this idea of like deficiency, he doesn't understand it because he didn't grow up in this world. I think like growing up as like a black body, like in places like France, where you're constantly being made to feel like you don't belong here, or you're like, you must be a delinquent, or you must be this, or nothing is like sort of designed for you, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like kind of designed to make you feel oppressed, but actually it's like, these are just ideas. They're not actual truth. So like to kind of go on this search for like, what is the actual truth? Because it's not like this everywhere in the world, you know? This world thrives on, you know, making people feel less than so that they can just go ahead and like be part of the machine, and you know what I'm saying? So
for sure.
Feed the system.
For sure. And I think the system is like, it's rooted in this like illusion of hierarchy. So you're constantly like, I'm either less than or I need to be better than. And then it means there's a kind of constant mode of disconnection that's happening because we're always like seeing each other as threat. So we can't rest. And I think really what it means to kind of come back to divinity or devotion is coming into a recognition that already we're enough and we can rest in our bodies. And I really want to emphasize the body as a site of rest, because I think these systems of oppression, they really work to kind of occupy the mind. The mind becomes the site of living. Like we're constantly thinking, we're constantly churning, and there's a disconnection from the body. And I think especially for black and brown bodies, when the body has been kind of a site of, it's been framed as a site of harm or threat or something dangerous, to re-inhabit the body as divine is a really kind of a radical resistant move. And I think for me, what I find so kind of powerful and disarming and heart-opening about this album is like, it's this kind of urgent command to re-enter the body and to feel your heart. And that's why I think it's medicine for the body.
I appreciate that. Like, I feel like that was maybe like one of the goals as we were making it, because I just remember like being in the room with Josh, and he was so adamant that like, you got this. Like, he created such a safe space for me. And every time we kept coming back to like, does this feel good? Like, does it feel good when we're listening to this? Like, what does this do to like our hearts? Does it make us feel calm? Like, does it make us, you know, what is the vibration that we feel? And that was the marker that we used to decide if something was going to be used or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, are we going to continue with this piece of music? It's like, does it make you feel good? You know, instead of like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it this? Is it that? Like, it was about the vibration that we felt like within ourselves, and if it felt like truth, did it ring as truth? So but that's why I appreciate you saying that.
I love that, because there's a lot of language, kind of common discourse at the moment about healing. What does it mean to heal? And really, I think the heart of that is coming back into the body as a site of intuition and allowing the body to be a compass in a way that kind of comes away from our wounding like our hurt as being like the really directive force, like coming back, well, what is my body really saying underneath all of these lies that are kind of imposed upon us from these systems of oppression, right? And so for you to say, actually, this album was made from a genuine deep listening to the body, and that being the kind of site of direction and stewardship is incredible. I've been in this process, I think, of trying to come into having a better understanding of what it is my body's telling me. And that's such difficult work, I think, for so many of us, to have the conditions that allow us to really be still and listen to, like, what is it that our body wants us to do? How does our body imagine freedom? What is my body dreaming of, you know?
You just made me think about, like, the idea of, like, vulnerability and then also letting go. And I was just curious, like, in your work, do people describe your work as radical? Like, to me, you know, I feel like it is radical, being like a queer Muslim, like, poet. And you go to places that, like, make people feel uncomfortable, you know? And how do you take on that responsibility of knowing that you're going to, like, shake things up, you know? But that someone has to do that work in order for new narratives to be alive in the world, you know? Like, how, like, where does that sit for you, and, like, how it also might impact your personal life as well?
Yeah. Are you interviewing me or am I interviewing you?
No, we're not interviewing, we're having a conversation. You know, it's
I'm
a
like,
conversation. Just thinking about this idea of, like, vulnerability and, like, letting go, and also, like, fearlessness to, like, say the things that are not always easy to say publicly, you know?
I think that in any work of love, which is my kind of orienting compass in all of the work that I do, it requires risk. There is always going to be risk, a risk of a broken heart, a risk of loss, a risk of grief, a risk of being misunderstood or even being harmed. And I think that I am deepening my practice and capacity to hold the discomfort of risk. And, you know, there is risk when we are speaking about God or love in a queer body, that people think that we're trying to perpetuate some kind of, I don't know, co-opting of religion or, you know, and for me, it's actually, I'm wanting to open up the doors to make love more possible in every moment. That's really essentially, like, what it's about for me. And it will always require risk to some extent. And it's not an absence of fear. It's not an absence of terror. Vulnerability, to me, it comes with a courage, essentially, to be with the fear. Can I do this thing? Can I put my heart out there? I think you're doing this very much with this album, which is, can I show more and more of myself in authenticity and be misunderstood, maybe not be met, and still make the choice to give regardless, you know? And I think really, if you're creating and giving art from a premise of generosity, which means I am making this thing to give to the world, rather than being attached to how it's perceived, which is, like, what is the outcome? Is this going to do well? Like, is it going to be a best-selling book or, like, you know, I don't know, platinum album or whatever, I don't know, actually, if you stay with the heart of, I have something to give, and I trust in my own divine essence, I trust in the making of this thing being infused with devotion, then it will infiltrate in how it's received regardless. And we may not be able to measure that every time. But I think that's also what capitalism tries to tell us that we have to do, which is measure the outcome. And so there's a radicality in refusing that and just trusting that what we make will meet other people's hearts and will open their hearts. And and I'm wondering, like, what that has been like for you with this album.
I was just talking about this earlier, like, the idea of being in service of the music. I don't consider myself, like, a religious person, but like, I'm speaking a lot, like, about God, because it's something that I'm, like, questioning in my own life, and I'm always, like, looking for God in ways, like, in different ways. And often I feel like the sort of calling that I feel towards music must be sort of, like, guided by, like, this force, you know, that I can't fully comprehend. And I then, like, start to feel like I really am in service because it's moving, like, through me. Someone once told me, you know, if you've been, like, given a gift, like, say with your voice or with your writing, the worst thing you can do is, like, hoard or, like, refuse to use your gift. Like, it's actually not for you. you know? And this is why, like, often I don't listen to my music after I've made it, because I kind of feel like once I've like released it out into the world, it was for whoever needed that piece of music. It wasn't for me to say, oh man, I've just made this like sick thing and I'm so sick and like, you know, like it feels good. But now actually like the thing that I enjoy the most is, you know, the moment where I'm singing and sharing it, and there's this moment of connection. That connection feels so much more special than any of the other rewards that could come with it. And also like letting the songs come to life as well when you're like on stage and they start to take on new meanings. And I've seen people find new meanings in this stuff that I didn't even know was there. And it's like, oh my God, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy how it has a life of its own.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I think it makes me think of that, the interlude where I'm talking about divine emergence, which is, you know, God as a verb that we are making and living with each other. And I think there's something quite magical and mystical and bewildering that happens when you are really in a state of surrender, which is where you're not trying to kind of control and micromanage, but you open your heart so something moves through you. And that's, I think, what you're speaking to, which is where the music kind of comes through you. It feels like something vaster, almost kind of like astrological is coming through you in that moment. And you just feel like you're not even you. You know, the ego momentarily like rests, like the I gets to be put down. And there's just something just something miraculous and vast. And that, I think, is the heart of where we get to feel connected, because we're reminded of our we-ness. And that also is really at the heart of the album, this kind of togetherness, this gathering through the different interludes. I know there was so much collaboration in it for you, but that sense of us really is kind of the heartbeat of the album too, you know.
So one of the things that I was just thinking about is also, you know, like skill and like practice as well. We can kind of talk about like, oh, it's just like flowing through me, but like also there's like years of like practice at the craft, like also like, you know, having written like so many songs, and you probably like, I don't know, thousands of poems. And I just wanted to bring that up because I know that like a lot of people who like listen to my music are like up and coming artists or different creatives. And I don't want to like give this illusion that it's like, ooh, you just like walk in. I think that there's something about also being able to meet like the thing, you know, and you kind of get to a place where you've put in the work and like you kind of know what you're doing, that now you can just like sort of let the magic unfold.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And actually it makes me think of the etymology of devotion, which is dedication. And actually there's something about the kind of dedicated discipline of practice over time that allows not just a kind of honing of a craft, but you're deepening your capacity to be attentive. And it's through attention, I think, that we kind of deepen our presence to the world. We're in a closer, more intimate relationship with it. And there's something, I think the repeated return to something that then becomes a kind of revelation where we get to meet these unmet parts of ourselves. There's more mystery that gets to be met when we keep going back to something over and over again. You know, the sacredness of repetition. And I think a lot of people sadly like give up. They don't have that commitment, they don't have that discipline. And there's something about that kind of worshipful return over and over again, even with craft, that gets you to the place where you can really be this kind of vessel of receipt, where the divine can pass through you. But absolutely, I think what you're saying is that can't come without discipline, dedication, practice. And that
and curiosity.
And curiosity
well.
For sure, you know. And I think a gentleness and a grace, it's not this kind of like sergeant level, like you need to do this thing over and over, which is kind of rooted in criticism. It requires a softness and also practice that we do together. It's not just me, but we are in practice, you know.
I mean, it's funny, like speaking with Zakia earlier, and the word gentleness like came up again, and I think it's something I've like kind of realized that like I grew up like kind of like in a hard world, you know, like in terms of like just my upbringing, and it was all about like thick skin and all of that. And like just sort of learn to like apply softness is something that I think, even though if we were to look back through all of my work, maybe it still sounds soft. And I still don't know how to say that word in English, but in French it's hérisson. I think it's like the animals with the spikes.
Hedgehog, yeah.
I feel like a lot of my music was like that before. So there was like this like kind of gentle interior, but like there was a bit of like this world is like crazy and like, you know, I've got to be like defenses up, you know. And in here, I think that there's like a calmness that allows me to sort of like realize that actually the softness is the thing that allows you to deal with the shock. Things that are soft, like, don't break, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're malleable and they can handle just the more difficult side of the world and of existing, because it's a painful thing to be alive, you know what I mean? Like, as beautiful as it is, it's like pretty challenging.
For sure. Absolutely. I hear it. I'm a big believer in like tenderness as a method, you know, and I think you're speaking to kind of the different forms of softness. And if we think about water as a body, there's a fluidity, right? And a gentleness that allows us to be still, and it kind of commands a peace and a stillness. And at the same time, it can be fierce and forceful and fuck shit up, you know? So it's like, it's all of that. All of that is necessary, you know? And I think there have been times where maybe there's been a necessity for you to have those spiky kind of practices for protection. And then there's also something in the kind of resting of that and practicing something more tender and something more soft. And so it's not a kind of abandonment of either methodology. It's a recognition that all of it has its service.
And this is the thing that I feel like I always get into that trap where I'm always like, I will start going to this duality, like, this thing I was doing before is so wrong and this thing now is so right. And it's something that I'm just learning, that all of it coexists together. And I think that's the beauty and like this idea of oneness. And often when I'm describing this, I'm talking about like the chaos and the beauty, like being of each other, you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say?
I mean, I feel like we've got some good stuff there, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking great.
Yeah,